Hi, it's Mr. Baumgarten here with the first of a series of videos on using Tkinter, the graphical user interface or GUI library of Python. To use GUIs, you really need to have a bit of an understanding of Object Orientated Programming. So in walking through this first demo, I'm going to introduce some of the concepts of Object Orientated Programming as well. And I will assume that you are comfortable with the idea of functions as well as the general basics of Python. So if you aren't familiar or comfortable with those, then you need to go back and look at those prior to using this video. To use the Tkinter library, the first thing we need to do is import Tkinter. And I'm going to put in here, import Tkinter as TK. Now, if you're looking on tutorials online, you may see this being done as from Tkinter import star. And I would recommend against doing that, because what that will do is load in all the Tkinter module functionality, all the variables and functions straight into your Python environment, which increases the risk of you accidentally overwriting some of the Tkinter functions with your own variable names or functions. And so this way you use tk dot as a preface for any of the functionality, and it provides that extra safety and assurance there. And it also means makes it clear to you when you know that you are using TK functionality. So I said we're going to use object-oriented programming, so I'm going to create a class, and I'm just going to call it app for our simple little app that we're going to build. And then I create the initialization function, which is double underscore init double underscore and then self, and I'm going to have one parameter which I'm going to call the parent variable. And what this is a function that will be automatically automatically executed whenever I create an object of type app. And what we do with object-oriented programming is effectively we're creating our own type of variable that we can so think of like strings and stuff like that. Here where we can create multiple different strings, now we are creating something called an app, and we can create multiple different apps, multiple different instances of it. So let's just code this up a little bit first, and then I'll further explain what's going on here. So I'm going to save our parent variable comes in. All right, so this is just this is going to be an object that links to our TK system, and I'm going to save a copy of it to ourselves. All right, and then we are going to create a window, and this is TK dot, okay, because I've imported the Tkinter library as TK, and you can see now that VS Code recognizes that I'm using the TK library and gives me the various functions that are available. And I'm going to create a top level, which is the name for the Windows system within TK, and let's set up the geometry for this window, and I'll just make this 300 by 200 pixels. You can make yours whatever you want. Let's give it a title, so window.title, my first GUI app. And I'm going to put in here window.protocol wm underscore delete window as a string, and then self.parent.quit. Now what this will do is, when the window opens up, if I click on the close icon at the top bar of the window, it'll go to my parent object, which will be our TK system, and execute the quit function. So it'll close our program. How do I know to type this? How do I know to type any of this? Okay, I've basically taught myself by reading online. So research, and then I've made my own notes and everything else like that. So as a programmer, I don't have this memorized. I don't instinctively know, oh, I need to do window.protocol, and I need the protocol to be wm underscore delete underscore window. Okay, I've learned it by reading, and so some programmer somewhere wrote this protocol function and decided that this will be a code that for defining a function to run whenever someone hits the close icon, and so set up their function to work in that way. And so you have to find the documentation that explains how these different things work. Stack Overflow is also very useful. I'll just put that out there. So I'm going to create a label, which is like a text area on my window, and that's tk.label, and I'm going to attach it to my window, and then I'm going to just give it some text. All right, hello will do for now, and let's make it a nice large font. All right, this requires a bracket, and I'm just going to put in here Arial, and let's make it size 48, something nice and large. And then I'm going to place this onto the screen. All right, so I've created it. Where does it go? So that's the place function. Well, for now we'll use the place function. There's several different ways of doing this within Tkinter, and I'll do videos on the different ways of doing screen layouts later on. And that's it for now. Let's show you how this works. So TK, so I'm going to create my root object, which is kind of like the base of the tree of all the Tkinter objects that we can create. Now by default, Tkinter is going to create its own little window, and by using the withdraw function, I'm going to say Tkinter, don't draw your default window, hide that, and just use the windows that I'm going to create here. So let's create window 1, and this is just going to be my app, and I'm going to pass it the root container of the Tkinter tree. All right, and so the value that I place in here will get populated into my first parameter of the init function. So the root handler, the base of the tree, I'm passing that to the init function, and that's going to go into init. So what I'm doing here is I'm creating an object or a variable, okay, of type app, and I'm passing that in, and it's going to, my variable is going to be called window1. So now if I run this, and I'm missing one key line, all right, root.main loop, and that's what tells Tkinter to get up and running, get it started. So there we go. Hello, there's my title bar, my first GUI. Hello is there in Arial size 48. It's 300 by 200 pixels large, and if I hit the little close icon, the program will quit. So just to kind of point out how this is actually just like strings or other variable types, I can create more than one of these. All right, and so if I do this, window 2 and window 3, what do you think is going to happen? I'm actually going to end up with 3 different windows. All right, window 1, 2, and 3. Well, okay, so now I've got window 1, 2, 3, and they are different variables, and I can change their values and run different functions associated with them by updating my class, which is one of the benefits of object-oriented programming. If I just make a change here, okay, maybe I'll make the size 64. All right, that change will automatically apply to everything that is linked, that is made from this class. But maybe I want one window to look different to another window. How can I do that? And that's also where the benefit of object-oriented programming comes in, and allows me to explain what the self nonsense is all about. Because why, suddenly I'm putting the word self and a dot in front of all of the variables that I am creating. So let's create another function inside this class, and I'm going to call it set text. And so whenever we create functions in our classes, the first parameter is always going to be self, but then when we run it in our code, we actually don't need to provide self. All right, because basically what this is it is a link, it is a copy of itself, hence the name self. All right, so when I run this, Python is invisibly providing a copy of window 1 to the app function, and here it's invisibly providing a copy of window 2 to that app function here, and so on. And so here, if I just say new text, so we'll write this up. Let's say self.label. Okay, and so because label was a variable that I created here in the init function, it's been attached, saved within every copy of app gets its own variable called label. And so I can get back to it inside any function just by doing this self.label. And I want to update the text, which is the configure function. And I'm just going to say text is equal to new text. Alright, and so now when I come down into my main program, I can say window 2, alright, and if I hit dot, we'll see I've got a set text function. Alright, and it only requires the one parameter because the self gets included by default. Alright, and if I just say here window 2, and let's do the same for window 3, set text window 3. So once we run this, we see that each window, and if I just stretch these open so you can see them, has their own different labels because we have run the set text function with window 2, window 3, and so the second window has the label, the text saying window 2, and the third window says window 3. And so what's actually happened is each different copy of the app that we have created has their own private information which can be referred to just by writing the function once. And so referring to myself is basically what the keyword for self is doing here. So referring to myself, get my label variable, so whichever copy I am, get my one and update its text to this. And we can see the same thing again if I create one more quick little function. Let's say set background. So we'll just change the background color here, and we'll just feed in one variable for a color value, and it's just self dot window dot configure the background, so BG for background, and again that's just by reading the documentation, and I'll set that to whatever I set my color variable. And I also need to do it for the label because the label has its own separate background, and so it would just appear as a white box if I didn't do it to the label as well. And now I can come down into my program and let's say window 1. So if I save this, window 1, I should now have a set background function. Yes, I do. Oops. And so if I provide it a number code, let's make it kind of a bit of a reddish color, and I'll run this. That should be a reddish kind of color, so run Python, and there we go. Window 1 now has a red background. Maybe I want to change the foreground to white text as well. That's easy enough to do. You might be able to guess how to do it. Define a set. Let's make up a function called set foreground, and I'll feed in a color. And this time we only need to update the foreground on the label itself because the window doesn't have a foreground that is relevant. And it's just FG equals color. And now if I come back into my program, window 1.set foreground, let's make that white so it stands out in contrast against the red better. Save and run. There we go. All right, so each function has its own, each object has its own instance of label that can be updated independently of each other. And so that's what the self keyword is really all about. The whole idea of object-oriented programming is that you attach the data and the functionality that maintains and modifies that data are bound together into a single object that you can pass around as like a variable. So I hope that has helped. A quick little introduction to Tkinter and object-oriented programming, and we'll get into a lot more Tkinter in the videos to come. Thank you. This is Mr. Baumgarten signing out.